I'm Sam. Welcome back to Brickwall Pictures. Today I am doing a Denis Villeneuve tier list. I have previously done tier lists for a whole bunch of filmmakers, so make sure you check the link in the description if you want to check those out. I got ones for Martin Scorsese, for David Lynch, for Jim Jarmusch, for the Coen brothers, for Bong Joon-ho, for Chan-wook Park, and for a bunch of martial artists. I got one for Jackie Chan, for Donnie Yen, for Jet Li, for Iko Uwais. Whole bunch of people. And now we are covering Denis Villeneuve. These movies are in a randomized order, except for I did put Dune last, because that's like the big new hot ticket item. First up is Incendies, which is one of his foreign language films before he became an English language filmmaker. Incendies is one you might not have seen if you're just familiar with his bigger movies, because it's Prisoners shot Villeneuve's cachet as a filmmaker into the stratosphere. He hit new audiences and much larger audiences with Prisoners. So from Prisoners onward, his movies got a whole lot more attention. He's got a couple before then that are worth checking out, such as Incendies, which is a very harrowing story. It's well acted. The male lead in this is the same male lead from Polytechnique. Incendies is excellently directed. The characters are a little on the simple side, but there are some sequences in this that are just so harrowing. Particularly, there's this unforgettable sequence on a bus where there's like people are getting shot, like just civilians on a bus that's being like invaded, kind of. That is the standout sequence of the entire film, and it's what really sticks in my mind. The movie's worth watching for that one scene alone. And there's good stuff all throughout. I will say, though, Incendies is a film where there are individual scenes that are much stronger than the overall film. It is not a case of the sum greater than the sum of its parts. The parts are much better than the whole. Not that the whole is bad, though, but it's very good. I would put it in like C.5, you know. I'm gonna be generous, put it in B tier for the time being. That might bump down to C. We'll see how I feel. Next up is Enemy, which is actually possibly my favorite of Villeneuve's films. I absolutely love Enemy. I think it's kind of like criminally underrated, I think. It's his one post-Prisoners film that doesn't seem to get talked about, at least not nearly as often. I think Enemy is fucking fantastic. I've seen it a bunch of times. Oh, I made a video essay about it, actually. There's a video on my channel. I'll put it in the description. It's called How Denis Villeneuve Crafted a Sense of Dread in Enemy. Watch that video for more of my thoughts on that. So I'll keep this brief here. Enemy is an S-tier film for me. One of my favorites of its genre. Also, it's very similar to a movie that Richard Ayoade made around the same time called The Double. Both movies are like dark psychological thrillers that have one main actor playing two parts, and you kind of question reality and whatnot. And they're both great. So check out The Double too. Both of them went under the radar for whatever reason. They're also both adapted from a book called The Double, but they're different books called The Double. One's a Jose Saramago book, and the other is a Franz Kafka thing. So they happen to share the same title and source material and be very similar, but they're actually completely unrelated. Both very good though, both underrated. And Richard Ayoade is so underrated as a director. At least he gets credit as like a brilliant comedic actor and like panel show guest and host and whatnot. He deserves more credit as a filmmaker, and I really hope he gets to make another feature film, because his two films, The Double and Submarine, are both excellent. Next up is Blade Runner 2049. Now, I went into this movie with, average to maybe like lower expectations than a lot of people had. Because I'm not that big a fan of the original Blade Runner. It just doesn't do a whole lot for me. Now, I will preface that by saying that there's like, a dozen different cuts of that movie, so maybe I haven't seen the best cut. I'll watch a different cut of Blade Runner someday, and maybe I'll like the original more. As far as just comparing the cut I saw to the new Blade Runner, I like the new one a whole lot more. I don't think it's a perfect movie. I think it's kind of light on story, but it's just dripping in atmosphere, this excellent atmosphere. It is gorgeous. Roger Deakins does some of his best work in the cinematography department. The performances are simple, but they're appropriate for the parts that they're playing. It's got the right kind of spectacle. If you're familiar with my taste, you know that spectacle and like huge scope is not really my jam, so to speak. But the way that Blade Runner 2049 handles scope and spectacle is, if I am going to veer towards something that's big in scope and big in spectacle, Blade Runner 2049 is the type of that spectacle that I would lean toward if I had to pick some kind of big spectacle kind of movie, big special effects heavy movie. Blade Runner 2049, it's so gorgeous. Like every single shot is incredible. It's jaw-dropping. And it works really well in that regard. There isn't enough story and whatnot for me to put it above B tier though. But, judging cinematography, production design, the special effects, all that stuff, it's probably an A tier on that front. Okay, next up is Rated R for Nudity. If you not familiar with this, I don't blame you. This is a little short film he did. Honestly, it is like nothing. It's like I think it's supposed to be like an experiment in simulated mass hypnosis or something like that. This is like nothing. You know what? I don't even think I want to rank this on the tier list because it's so fluff nonsense. I'm just gonna. It is now. It's off the tier list. Don't bother with that one. Okay, next up, let's go with Prisoners. Prisoners is the other one alongside Enemy. That might be my favorite and maybe tied for it. Prisoners, I think, is excellent. I love this type of really dark thriller, like a mystery thriller with the like crime-solving component. I feel it's very much in line with like a David Fincher kind of movie, like Gone Girl or Seven or Zodiac. It nails that particular vibe, and it's a vibe that I absolutely love. I think it's such a good script. This Prisoner's screenplay is so tight and perfect, and what really elevates it even further is are the performances. The performances from the entire cast, like Melissa Leo, excellent, right? Paul Dano, incredible in this role. Jake Gyllenhaal he's very good at it. His character is the one who has a little bit less to work with, but he still gets a lot of mileage out of it. And his character is just distinctive enough to not just feel like movie detective. Like there's a little bit more to him. There's just enough to make him feel distinctive. And then Hugh Jackman is like, holy shit. Hugh Jackman's the best he's ever been, I think, in Prisoners. He has a handful of scenes that are just so excellent. Like, again, if you saw my best of the decade thing where I like repicked all the Oscar categories for the decade, you would know that Prisoners got a whole bunch of attention, including actor attention, like best performance attention from me. Before my best of the decade and Brickwall Film Awards and all that got blocked worldwide on bullshit copyright claims. Anyway, Prisoners I think is fantastic, and it's like endlessly rewatchable. It's got that like rainy atmosphere and like simple but perfectly appropriate cinematography. It's got that like, it's a dark fucked up story, but it has this like comforting feeling to it. I don't know. I just love it. S tier for me. Okay, next up is Sicario. Now, where I'm ranking Prisoners a little tiny bit higher than some people might, I might be ranking Sicario a little lower than some people might. People love Sicario. I like it a whole lot too. I think Benicio del Toro in particular is fantastic in this, especially the way his character shifts toward the third act. I'm not going to spoil anything, but like the way the narrative kind of pivots to follow him and it gets like a whole lot darker, I think is the best part of the movie. That being said, though, I mean, this isn't a fault with the original movie, but just Sicario 2, Day of the Soldado, did not work for me whatsoever. I did not like Sicario 2, and I think it's a real testament to how much Denis Villeneuve elevated the material. But I don't really think that, what's the guy who did the second one, Salima? I don't think the second one is like directed poorly. I think it's more like the script. And I also think that Denis is elevating the script of Sicario quite a lot. But I also think it's a problem that like you don't have a character like Emily Blunt in the second one, or like Daniel Kaluuya, who you can like ground yourself in their perspective. Instead, you just have Benicio del Toro and Josh Brolin, who are very interesting in the first Sicario, but they don't work as well as the main characters. The way that they're written and the way that they're like morally aligned and whatnot works better when they're in a secondary role. Plus the narrative of Del Toro, rescuing the little girl, it just feels so cliche at this point, of big tough killer guy protecting little girl. It's like, we've seen that enough at this point, Anyway, but I'm talking a lot about the second Sicario. The first Sicario I think is very good. It doesn't work quite as well for me as it seems to for some people, but it's B tier easily. Okay, Arrival. The sort of 1-2 punch of Arrival and Nocturnal Animals, which came out the same year, both starring Amy Adams. The 1-2 punch of those two movies is what made me a fan of Amy Adams. Before those two movies, I had seen her in plenty of movies where she was fine, but I was never like blown away. Seeing her in those two roles was like, wow, she's got incredible range and gives two incredible performances in those films. Nocturnal Animals is another one that I think is so severely underrated. That movie is like one of the best of the decade. Again, if you saw my decade video before it got blocked, you would know how much I gushed about Nocturnal Animals. But anyway, Arrival I think is also excellent. I wrote a video essay about Arrival for Studio Binder, if you want to hear more of my thoughts on that. It's called How Arrival Balances Fear and Intrigue, I think was the title of that video essay. I think it's a great script from, I believe the writer's name is Eric Heiserer, or something along those lines. Great script from him. Fantastic plot twist. But again, Denis' direction really shines. Like, there's all these little production design decisions and choices for color, and it all just culminates in a better overall package. Jeremy Renner's a little flat. I don't know. I never really get too much from the Red Dog. He's fine. He's very much like fine in every performance I see from him. I feel like someone else could have got a little more out of that role. It's very much the Amy Adams show in that film, and she's great in it. The overall film is great. I love the look and sound design of the aliens, and even just like the, what would you call it, like the typography of their alien language, I think is fascinating. But more than anything else, it's the way that this movie explores the concept of time, like this time loop idea, and the way that it has these flashbacks that like you assume are one thing and then turn out to be something completely different. I think all that is fascinating. The way that these like alien entities experience time in a different manner is a really heady, complex idea that is conveyed with the deftest touch possible. I think it's a great script, wonderfully executed, A tier. Okay, next up is Polytechnique. I made a video about this movie fairly recently. I did a pretty deep dive review on Polytechnique, so I don't need to go too in-depth on it. But I will just say go watch that review. I go very in-depth on Polytechnique, why it works so well. I think it's A tier again. I like it more than these 3 B tiers, so that's where I'm going to put it. And next up is Dune. Dune Part 2 has been confirmed, as is there's a Dune spin-off too. There's a TV series called Dune the Sisterhood. That is also in the works. So it's a whole big ordeal. I talked about David Lynch's Dune when I did my David Lynch tier list, so you can check that video to see where I rank that. This Dune it's obviously a big step up from the Lynch version. And the Lynch version isn't like the worst thing ever, but it's definitely not good. This version it's much better. It's extremely well made. I have some issues with it though. I think it is a gorgeous film. It's visually stunning and orally stunning, or orally stunning. In all the production regards, it's incredible. The cast I think is really good. Like I like Timothée Chalamet. His character doesn't have too much performance-wise or even character-wise. Like the character is like the chosen one, kind of like stock character is what it kind of feels like, at least in Part 1 so far. Jason Momoa, I think, comes off really well, actually. He's very charismatic, even though his character's name, Duncan Idaho, is like the dumbest shit I've ever heard. The names in this movie, man, holy shit. Duncan Idaho, the savior of the universe, is named Paul. You kidding me? Paul is the chosen one. Not gonna fly with me here. You got sci-fi names. You got sci-fi guys named Gurney Halleck. It's like, yeah, sci-fi name. And then the other guy's named Duncan Idaho. First off, what is Idaho in this universe? Right? Does the state of Idaho exist in the Dune universe? Is there a U.S. with Idaho in it? What? Dune, very well made. Great cast, even though I feel like a lot of them don't have too much to do. Like Oscar Isaac, I think, gets the most he can out of that character. I like Skarsgård as the Baron, but he doesn't really do much of anything at this point in the story. It's very much a non-ending since they're dividing it in half. The point that it ends feels like just any other scene ending, It doesn't have any kind of closure. It's like you really are getting half a story. It's not like you're getting a movie and a sequel, you're getting half a movie. And Villeneuve wanted to make both halves simultaneously, and the studio said no because it was too expensive. Honestly, though, for how excellently executed it all is, I just don't find the story all that engaging. I know it's like the best-selling sci-fi novel of all time. I don't feel engaged by any of these characters or this world. It's long and it remains visually stunning throughout, but it did not engage me all that much. It's a C tier for me. I know a lot of people are like S tier all the way, A tier, whatever. For me, it's C because it just did not ever engage me on like a visceral storytelling level. It is incredibly constructed, though. I mean, I will give it that. That's what stops from being, lower. But yeah, that's my Denis Villeneuve tier list. You can see his whole body of work is very much crowded toward the top half of this tier list here. And I feel pretty good about where those rankings are. Incendies, Blade Runner, Sicario, and in B tier. That feels right. Huge fan of Denis Villeneuve. I think he's one of the best filmmakers working. And keep in mind, all of these movies except for Dune were all made in the space of a decade, right? Between 2000 and 2010, he made Polytechnique, Incendies, Prisoners, Enemy, Arrival, Blade Runner, and Sicario, all in the space of 10 years. That is incredible. Which is why I picked him as my director of the decade in my sadly forgotten, my fallen video of the no one else has a filmography that packed and that overall quality in the space of just 10 years without a single like dud in the bunch. Incredible filmmaker. Looking forward to whatever he puts out in the future. Post Dune especially, I'd like to see him get back to more individual stuff. And he has something in the works already. There's a miniseries called The Sun that he's directing with Gyllenhaal again. Glad to see him working together because Gyllenhaal's in the 2 S-tier Villeneuve films. But yeah, thanks for watching my Denis Villeneuve tier list. Let me know where you would rank his movies because I'm sure we disagree on a couple. Probably on like Dune and Blade Runner or maybe Sicario in particular. Check out my Polytechnique review and my Enemy video essay. Make sure you subscribe. Check out my other tier list, link in the description. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.